On today's bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks, Darius Acuff Jr., five-star point guard in the class of 2025, is a Razorback. What it means for Kansas. All in on Darryn Peterson?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every one of our shows. You wouldn't want to miss it. We had Phil Steele on with us earlier this week talking a little KU football, but some KU basketball news today that we're going to get into on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Darius Acuff Jr., who is a five-star point guard, is picking Arkansas. So we'll get into that, what it means for KU, and where they go from here for the class of 2025. So Acuff is a 6'3", 180-pound point guard. He is a five-star recruit and a top 5 national recruit by 24/7 Sports. He had Kansas in the Final Three, but he decided to go to Arkansas to play for John Calipari. Not that that is a huge surprise that, hey, five-star recruit wants to play for John Calipari. We've seen that a time or two before. So where does KU go from here? All that and more. This episode, though, is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So who is Darius Acuff Jr.? If you didn't know, he plays at IMG Academy right now. He's a class of 2025 player, which means not obviously this upcoming season. It would be next season, 2025-26, when he would be a freshman. 6'3", 180-pound point guard. He is rated as low as 18th by On3, where he's the number 2 point guard. That one seems to be the outlier. The other 3 main sites all have him as a top 10 recruit. ESPN has him 10th. With the second point guard, Rivals has him 9th. But the 4th point guard, that's because they're counting guys who are more combo guards as point guards. And then 24/7 Sports is the high water mark. They have him 4th overall in the class and the number 1 point guard in the class. Darryn Peterson, who we're going to talk about later, is listed as a combo guard for what it's worth, though Peterson would be higher than him if you're just talking combo guard / point guard, all in one same breath. But this is an elite recruit. He is somebody who is a Detroit native, and I think we had an episode earlier in the offseason. If you're in everyday, you would have caught that. He is somebody who is really good first step. He's able to get guys on his hip really well, drive into the lane and finish at the rim because of that quick first step that allows him to kind of just keep you there on his hip with that good combination of things. Showed an ability to, shoot the basketball. I guess he has a good wingspan. He's like almost a +5 in terms of the wingspan. Good feel on kind of the pick and roll. He can score the basketball. He is the prototypical, like Bill Self. You think of like one of those point guards that could score. That would be Darius Acuff Jr. Not that he can't pass. He is a good passer, but I think the scoring is definitely the more notable part of his game. And, he's not like this uber athlete. He's not like John Wall, Kyrie Irving type speed. But again, that first step is very, very good. And he just is an overall really good scoring guard. And so he would have kind of brought you back. Kansas is going to be losing DeJuan Harris at the end of next season, or this season, I guess, whatever you want to refer to. And there's going to be a sizable hole at the point guard position. And KU was in it strong for Darius Acuff for a little there, it seemed like. And honestly, there was a point where it seemed like maybe that was the lean. I think he had a visit with Kansas back in, I guess it would have been the spring when he visited Kansas, and things seemed to be kind of going well there. I guess he was in on Michigan for a while when Juwan Howard was there, obviously being a Detroit native, kind of kept him around there. And he was in on Kentucky for a while when John Calipari was there. Now that Calipari goes to Arkansas, and obviously Calipari has the track record of putting guys in the NBA. Now, we can have the argument all day long about, well, any coach would have put, name the point guards that he's had, right? John Wall or I don't know. I guess if you want to, I don't know why I thought of Marquise Teague second, just maybe because that has the Kansas crossover, because that's not the second best point guard. But you're talking about the Harrison twins, right? You're looking at Tyrese Maxey, what he's doing with the 76ers. You can talk about that those guys would have gone to any college and worked their way into the first round or been a one and done. And I think there is a little bit of truth to that. But at the end of the day, perception is reality. And so if these recruits see these guys are going to play for this coach and going to the NBA, and they're like, hey, if it ain't broke, why fix it? And we can talk about, well, John Calipari hasn't been the best college basketball coach over the past handful of years. And again, fairness to that. But guess what? Recruits, a lot of them, especially if you're Darius Acuff, they do care more about that NBA stuff, even if it is perception over reality. That is the reality when it is the perception. So that's what ends up kind of happening there. And so for Kansas, I think it seems like all the way along they've been going hard after Acuff and hard after Darryn Peterson. And there had been kind of some talk, scuttlebutt, that maybe the Acuff side, the Acuff party, I guess you could say, has been certainly circus has too negative of a connotation. So I don't want to use that word, even though I just brought it up. But it's been a little wild to work with that party. And I'm sure that's the case for, a lot of high level recruits when you're, especially now factoring in NIL and all this stuff that you have to factor in recruiting. But Acuff would have been a really good player for KU. And it's not necessarily a big loss, because in recruiting, you don't necessarily lose someone. You still have an opportunity to go out and get somebody else who's really good. I think in an ideal world, Kansas would have loved to have been able to say, hey, let's get Acuff and Peterson. But I don't know if either of those players would have been on board with that. And so from that perspective, if you are choosing between Acuff and Peterson, notice that Bill Self has been, and maybe this was just indication that he felt like Acuff was leaning toward Arkansas. I don't know. But Bill Self has been at Darryn Peterson's games at whatever AAU events he's been at recently. It's every game. He's watching the full game. It seems like Kansas is doing the full press on Darryn Peterson. So again, where does that kind of lie between the two? To me, I'm a little bit more of a Peterson guy over an Acuff guy, but Acuff is still an outstanding player, and you would have loved to have him and then tried to convince Peterson to come too. So let's talk more about that. Where does KU go from here when you're talking about the future point guard for the Jayhawks? This episode, though, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. And that includes right now, you can even get in on the Olympics, right? So Olympic basketball is getting going, and we'll see how USA goes, because the last couple exhibition games have not been great. But you can get in on the swimming action if there's a sport you want to get into, beach volleyball, right? You can bet on it too at FanDuel, and they're giving you boosts. There was one up earlier today that was for the Olympics, where you get a boost for some of the action. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. All right, so where does KU go from here? No Darius Acuff Jr., and we talked about this earlier in the week. If you're an everydayer, you tuned into it. Who's going to be the future point guard for KU basketball come 2025 to 2026? DeJuan Harris graduates, Zeke Mayo graduates, Shaquille Moore graduates. Those are your three ball handlers from this year's team. Marco Jackson will be back, and he'll have experience in the system, 1 year of play, 1 year of sitting, basically, with the injury, and at least you would hope absorbing a lot mentally from what Bill Self wants and the scheme and system and everything like that. But that's going to be a big question coming off a big injury. If Marco would have played this season, maybe he would have been the favorite next season. Maybe he'll still be the favorite. We'll see how he comes back from that injury. But that kind of remains a question because of the injury, unfortunately. Then you have the transfer portal, which is still out there. You have the rest of high school recruiting. And there's some other good point guard recruits that are still out there. I've mostly made this a Darius Acuff and Darryn Peterson conversation. There are other really good point guard recruits that are out there that KU was offered, that KU was interested in, et cetera, et cetera. But Darryn Peterson is the big one, because Peterson, he's listed as a combo guard. Seems like to me, based on some of the quotes he's given, that the idea would be for Bill Self to kind of play him at the point guard. Now, I think that would be viewed in the same light as you would get another ball handler to play with him. That could be Marco Jackson, where maybe you play both and, they can kind of alternate bringing the ball up the floor, initiating the offense, whatever, or somebody else you bring on. But it is kind of all aboard the Darryn Peterson train now, who is ranked third on 24/7 sports, one spot ahead of Darius Acuff Jr. They're a little bit different games, but, they're both really good players. I don't mean to take away from one to, boost up the other, but yeah, I do lean to be more of a Peterson guy than an Acuff guy. So if you not landing Acuff is partially because you are the favorite to land Peterson and you do end up landing Peterson, it works out okay. Where it gets sticky is that what if the Peterson thing, what if one of his upcoming visits to, I think he's visiting like Ohio State and I forget where else, like what if they knock it out of the park on one of those visits and he ends up staying at home and going to Ohio State or picking one of these other schools, then all of a sudden you're in a different situation. And Kansas is still going to be okay because there, like I said, are other really good point guard commits and recruits still available out there. And the transfer portal, we know there will be point guards and scoring guards and combo guards that are available out there that are ready to have a big impact. So Kansas will, but when you're talking about option one, when you're talking about option 1A, it was Peterson or Acuff. Those were your 1A and 1B in some order. Seems like for KU, Peterson might have been 1A. So we'll see where that goes from here. But certainly you would have loved to have Acuff, so you just had that one ready and available, and then you could go all aboard Peterson. But again, that might not have ever been a possibility for both those kids. They might not have, wanted to play with each other. Not that, they don't get along, but they just might have both wanted to be the lead ball handler, and you can't have two of those guys come in. Right. So, all right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. We'll be back on Monday to talk a little more KU basketball, the top 5 strengths for KU hoops in the 2024 to 2025 season. We'll have plenty more KU football content. Make sure you're subscribed anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. See you next time with LOJ.